Well, sorry about that awkward cutoff. I'll probably do it again, so just hang on, kids. I was finishing talking about shortcuts last time, and I just kind of wanted to review those specific ones for Photoshop, so I'm going to tab over to that visual that I have for you. We talked about these, and now we're going to talk about more specific ones to Photoshop. Some involve the command key, and then some of these letters give you specific tools that you're going to be using a lot. It's good to get familiar with those so that you can move a lot faster when you're working with these programs. So Command plus in a Mac is to zoom in, Command minus is to zoom out. And if I go over to this document and I look at this, and something I can do, if I hold down the space bar, rather than having to go down to my cursor and move things, I can actually move it around like this. This is going to be particularly important when using other tools when I'm zoomed in. Something that you can see happening here that I think is a really important thing to view when you're working in an image is your ruler. If I hit Command R, it disappears. A lot of times it opens a document without that visible. I highly recommend just hitting Command R and getting that visible so you have a sense of the size of the image that you're working with. Particularly if you're going to be printing this out a more workable size in say 8.5 by 11, you want to make sure that you have a sense of the scale of your image right away. That's also going to be helpful in terms of using your guides and rulers, which if you start by clicking in the ruler and you drag, you can get your guides and rulers on there, and we'll talk more about those in a little bit. A quick thing, over here in this menu bar, I am hitting V to get to my selection tool very quickly, which is this arrow, and I can move things. It's a move tool, and I can move things. We'll talk more about what you can move, things in layers and such as that. But that's this whole column here are your tools. And so if you're not familiar with what it is, hover over it and it will give you a quick explanation and visual to find those. Over here on the right side would be your different windows for that you can customize by clicking up here and going to window. Some ones that I prefer to have up all the time are history, so that if I do something that I don't want, that I would like to undo, I can go back here. And then layers are going to be very important to have visible. You can also have your color palette and others that you also like working with as well. I'm going to zoom back out. Some things that you should be very aware of from the get-go that it seems like everybody kind of comes in yanking images off the internet. It's really important to be aware that images straight off the internet come as 72 dpi. You need to work with images that are a higher resolution than that, particularly if you're going to print. But even if you're just, and I mean print from the computer for any kind of high quality purpose, you want something like 300 dpi, and that is referring to dots per inch. For your image, for reference, it doesn't necessarily need to be 300 dpi, but it is much better to start with something that is higher resolution so that it's not extremely pixelated, which I'm sure you've experienced before. In order to work with the image size, you can go up to the image up here and then go down to image size. And this gives you a sense of the size of the image right now. It's straight from my phone, so it's still at 72 dpi, but it's really big in terms of scale right now. If I leave it like this and I change the size so that it is more workable for like an 8 by 8.5 by 11, for example, you can see here that it is changing the resolution. And so originally, when it was at 72 dpi and 56 inches, that is 72 dots in 1 inch. Once I change the size of that, that means I'm not actually resampling anything, so I'm just changing the dimensions. And so because it's condensing that down, there's going to be a more concentrated amount of pixels per inch, right? So that's more than normally what I would need for print, and it's going to be somewhat of a large document size. If you choose something like resample, that means that you're changing the amount of pixels and you're manipulating that. So if I did this and then I tried to change the document size from here, it is not going to change the size of the resolution. This gets into a kind of messy area, and it's a more advanced thing that we should have a conversation about in the future, but you need to be very careful with this. If you resample it, you're changing the pixel dimensions of an image. If you downsample, you're eliminating pixels, and therefore you're deleting information and detail from the image, right? So if I do this and I do 72, then I have just made the document smaller and kept it at a smaller resolution, which means I've removed a lot of information, and I won't get that back. If I upsample it, if I were to, I can hit the option key, and you can see that cancel changes to reset. If I hit reset, it changes it back to the original dimensions. If I click resample, and I try to make my document bigger, I can do that, but I am losing information. Okay, I'm not losing information, but I'm adding pixels, but it's making information up, which you don't want to do. So the idea is you always want to start with an image that is higher resolution as much as you can. For our sake right now, I'm not going to resample. I'm just going to change it to 10 inches. I might change it to the size that I want, but I also know that 400 is way more than what I need. So I might now click at this point that I have it the size that I want. Actually, I'll make it 11. And then I will click resample so that I can make it 300. Okay. And then I'll hit OK.